Hello everyone and welcome to another Sonicstate review. My name's Tosh from Widge Productions, and in today's review we're going to be taking a look at Universal Audio's UAD version 9 software for Apollo audio interfaces and UAD to accelerator systems. Okay, version 9 software. So as you'd expect, there's a brace of new plugins to play with, and there's some tweaks under the hood. So let's just have a quick look at the summary of what changes have been made under the hood. Probably the most notable will be for all you Firewire users out there. You now get Console 2. So this is the reworked front end, which, if you cast minds back a couple of reviews, I did an in-depth on Console 2 when it came out for Thunderbolt. Now Firewire users get the benefit of the flexible routing, the additional control over things like core audio, and general improvements to workflow. So quite a major update there for Firewire users. You've also got compatibility for Windows 10 Thunderbolt and Windows 10 Anniversary Update, as well as compatibility for Sierra on Macs. Now, let's have a look at the plugins that have come out, because we've got some interesting ones here. We've got the API 2500 Bus Compressor, and that's really going to be the focus of this review. But alongside that, we've got a couple of others now. This one's been developed by Brainworks, I believe, the stereo tap delay, and it's a modulation effect. So rather than long delays, this uses a series of short delay taps and applies modulation to them, and you can create some lovely, things from subtle flanging and chorusing to really quite lush enhancements of stereo width. Very creative tool there. Then we've got this Chandler Xena limiter. So this is a faithful hardware emulation of, I think, Chandler's homage to a classic bit of EMI hardware. Basically, it's a compressor limiter with some real character. Now, tucked away in the background here is this SonicLAB Sphere precision microphone system. Now, if you want to know more about this, I'd head over to SonicLAB's website and you'll get the scoop on it. It's not out yet, but it's basically a high-end microphone system that can emulate all the classic microphones and do a whole lot more to boot. And this plugin is sort of the software backend, and it's the plugins available on a lot of different formats. So this is obviously the UAD implementation of it, but on its own, it's not going to be doing much. So I guess that's why it's kind of in the background there. So without much further ado, let's jump in and have a look at the API bus compressor. Bus compression is often referred to as the glue that binds a mix together. Now, what does that actually mean? Well, it kind of translates to the gentle controlling of the dynamic range of the entire mix, plus some kind of coloration, often from the inherent distortion or EQ characteristics of the device. And there are lots of different compressors that are kind of designed specifically for bus compression, but you've got to realize as well that at the end of the day, a compressor is a compressor, and you can use it on a huge range of sources to great results. And this API 2500 is no exception. You can hear it on drums, on vocals, on bass. It does a great job. It's a very versatile compressor. So just to give an example of bus compression at work, let's fire up this track again, and I've got the compressor bypassed. And hear the lead in. Now I'm going to engage the compressor. I'm going to take it out again. And engage it again. Now, I've tried to level match that as well, so I'm not trying to trick you with having one louder than the other. But I'm hoping what you're hearing there is how, when the compressor's engaged, the whole mix seems to step forward a bit more. That mid-range becomes more present, and it feels a bit tighter and more together. And that's really what we're talking about in terms of glue and binding a mix together. And it's fairly subtle, and I do realise after doing this a while now that the internet doesn't really translate subtle very well. So I'm going to come on to a few more examples that are less than subtle, just so you can get a good idea of the sonic character of this compressor. But I wanted to just start there with a quick overview of bus compression. So I'm going to bypass this particular instance of the compressor that's on the mix bus, like that, and then we're going to go over and have a listen to the drum subgroup, where I've got another instance set up. So if I solo the drums, the compressor is currently bypassed, so this is the raw drum sound. Now I'm going to run through some of the controls, kicking the compressor in. I'll just switch it out again and in. You can hear it working subtly there. Let's just come in closer so you can see this. Now I'll run through some of these controls. Over here are your standard compressor controls: threshold, attack, ratio and release. So bringing the threshold down brings compression on earlier, or reduces the amount. So let's just go in very compressed. Attack is a stepped control, ranges from 30 milliseconds, so letting transients poke through, to 0.03, catching everything. Ratio, again stepped from 1.5 all the way up to infinity, which is basically limiting. And then we've got release, which is stepped from very fast, 0.05, to slow, to variable. And then in variable release, you have the second control, which makes it fast or slow. And that makes more sense as well on, you know, full mix, complex program material. Now let's go back onto a fast release and just have a look at some of these other controls. We've got a tone section here. Now you've got things that affect the RMS detector, to this thrust section, which I'll get onto a bit later. You've got the compressor knee, soft, medium or hard. So with thrust, let me just run the loop from the top. Yeah, that changes the character of the compressor. And then you've also got the choice between new or old style compression. Now new is feed forward. That is the gain change is calculated from the incoming signal and applied to the outgoing signal. Or in feedback mode, which is the kind of compression you get with an 1176 or a Fairchild, the gain reduction is calculated from the outgoing signal and applied to the incoming signal, so it creates a feedback loop. And they have a very particular character, as you can hear when I flip between them. Let's go a bit extreme to accentuate that. Now, when you squash it this hard, you can use this mix blend control over here to feed in the dry signal, so you can do parallel compression. And let's just bypass. Great for filling out some body. And giving you just a different sonic option there. I've also got this sidechain link control, which I will describe in a bit as well, but just suffice to say now that it allows you to completely unlink the sidechains or partially link them up to completely linked, and also filter that linking mechanism. Another thing to note over here is, as well as bypass and on-off, we've got makeup gain. It's currently set to automatic, so it compensates for the gain changes, or you can adjust that makeup gain yourself manually. Another neat little thing is this dial up here, which is for headroom, so you can adjust the plugin's internal headroom, which basically makes it distort earlier when it's cranked up all the way there, as illustrated there, or later if it's all the way over there. All in all, very flexible, and you've got a huge range of adjustment and tone shaping at your fingertips there. So going back to the mix bus, I'm going to have a look at the tone controls here. Now let's just zoom in on that. You've got controls for the knee, hard, medium, soft. So the knee is basically the onset, controlling the onset of compression. Is it with a soft knee, it's gradual. With a hard knee, it's quite abrupt. And then we have this detector thrust control over here, which is something you probably wouldn't have come across before. And what that is, quite simply, is a filter placed in the path of the RMS detector, so the part of the circuit that calculates the gain reduction. Now, in normal mode, the filter is inactive. The signal isn't changed going into that detector. In medium mode, there's a low cut and a high boost applied, and there's a sort of plateau in the middle where the signal's unaffected. And this is in terms of the frequency range of the signal. And then in loud mode, there's basically a slope going from a low cut all the way up to a high boost. So the mids are affected by that as well. And what that means is the compressor is more sensitive to those mids and high frequencies and less sensitive to lower frequencies compared to the medium and the normal modes. So in practice, what does that translate to? Well, let's just have a listen to this part of the song here. So we're in normal mode. And if I jump to loud mode, back to normal mode. Listen to the kick and the bass. Let's go back to the top there. And I'm going to make this a little bit more exaggerated by increasing my compression ratio. So normal, loud, normal, now it's obviously pushing the bus quite hard, but what I'm trying to illustrate there is that, you know, this particular track has a lot of bass in it, and in the loud mode the compressor is responding less to that bass, and it's allowing the kind of the punch from the kick and the sub bass sound to come through a lot more, while it kind of clamps down on the upper frequency material. So it depends on the material you're applying it to, but it's a great tool for enhancing the punch. Now I'm going to use a different example here to illustrate this link section of the controls. We just come in here. Now this relates to the side chain, and what it allows you to do is completely unlink them over here in independent mode, or have them partially linked in steps between 50% up to 100%. And then you've also got a filter here where you can low pass, high pass, or band pass the signal, the linking signal, which gives you a lot of control over the way the compressor affects the stereo image. And it's particularly useful in things like percussion, for example, where you've got stuff happening at different sides of the stereo image, you know, very transient material. So I've got this little percussion loop here. Okay, we got congas, bongo, and guiro going on there. Now, at the moment, the side chains are linked, and you can hear how the conga, it's slightly biased to one side, and it's pulling the compression with it. Now, if I unlink them, it sounds a lot more natural, because it's just allowing the side with the louder conga part to be compressed, and I can bring that compression in and start linking them. And I can filter it out, so or even bandpass filter it. So as you can see, that's quite powerful in terms of being able to manipulate the way the stereo image is impacted by compression. Okay, so I hope I've given you a good overview there of this plugin's sonic character as well as its many capabilities. There's a few more points I'd like to make before I wrap up. So firstly, the presets. As with all UAD plugins, there's a great selection of presets designed by some of the top names in the business. And just looking through the kind of presets they've got there, you can see they've been applying it to a load of different acoustic sources, which just kind of underlines that point I made earlier, that this is not just a bus compressor, it's a very versatile, very flexible compressor capable of acting on many, many different sources. Another thing to mention probably is the DSP usage. So I'm running an Apollo Quad here, and each instance of the plugin seems to add about 5% to my DSP usage. So it's not particularly hungry compared to some of the other plugins out there. And that given also the level of detail that has gone into modeling things like the transformers, the op amps, and all the other little components that make up the original hardware. So if you're interested in the plugin, or indeed any of the other ones that I mentioned at the start of the review, then you're going to need to download this version 9 of the UAD software, which you can get from UAudio's website, uaudio.com. And if you want to find out a bit more about the API 2500 bus compressor, there's a whole load of resources there, including some more examples, reviews, and some background on it. And you can also buy the plugin there, and it's currently retailing at a UK price of £229. Okay, so I'm going to play out now with a track that I'm working on for a band called Global Wave, and I've got the API compressor here on the drum bus, as well as on the master mix bus. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed the review, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Okay, thanks, bye.